Imagine Ukraine's hopes for powerful American missiles being dashed by a single phone call. That's precisely what happened when Vladimir Putin rang Donald Trump, potentially jeopardizing Kyiv's chances of acquiring Tomahawk missiles just as President Zelenskyy was heading to Washington to plead his case. According to Yuri Ushakov, a top Kremlin aide, Putin initiated the call specifically to dissuade Trump from supplying Ukraine with these long-range, precision-guided missiles. These Tomahawks, which Zelenskyy has been actively pursuing, would significantly boost Ukraine's offensive capabilities, even bringing Moscow within striking distance. This is a game-changer, and Putin clearly wants to prevent it. But here's where it gets controversial. Is it legitimate for one country to pressure another about its defense decisions? This phone call marks the 8th known conversation between Trump and Putin since the beginning of Trump's second term. It follows a pattern in the ongoing and often murky power play between Putin and Zelenskyy for influence over Trump. Think of it like this. Whenever Trump seemed inclined to support Kyiv, a call from Putin would often result in a noticeable shift in Trump's stance towards Moscow. It's a delicate dance of diplomacy, or perhaps something more manipulative. Trump, after recent expressions of frustration with Putin and hints of potentially providing Tomahawk missiles to Zelenskyy, appeared to backtrack following the call. "We need Tomahawks for the United States of America too. We have a lot of them, but we need them. I mean, we can't deplete for our country," Trump told reporters, adding, "I don't know what we can do about that." This raises a crucial question. Is Trump genuinely concerned about the U.S.'s missile reserves? Or is this a convenient excuse to appease Putin? Trump even recounted a rather flippant and arguably inappropriate exchange with Putin. "I did actually say, would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand Tomahawks to your opposition? I did say that to him. I said it just that way. He didn't like the idea. You have to be a little bit lighthearted sometimes." Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, suggested the meeting could happen within a couple of weeks or later, and that Putin had already discussed the planned summit with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Orban, known for his warm relations with both Trump and Putin, confirmed these discussions on X, stating, "Preparations for the USA-Russia peace summit are underway." However, a significant logistical hurdle remains. How will Putin travel to Hungary, given EU sanctions and airspace restrictions imposed following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the fact that he's wanted by the International Criminal Court, ICC? As an ICC signatory, Hungary would technically be obligated to arrest him. Orban, however, has previously indicated this wouldn't happen. When questioned on the logistical challenges, Peskov simply said the route was, so far, of course, unclear. Hungary's foreign minister, Péter Szijjártó, asserted Hungary's sovereignty, stating Putin would be received with respect and provided the conditions to negotiate with Trump. Trump and Putin's last meeting, in Alaska in August, failed to produce any significant diplomatic breakthroughs. Trump also mentioned upcoming high-level talks between Washington and Moscow, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, preceding the potential summit in Budapest. This entire situation appears to have dampened the momentum Zelenskyy had been building with Trump. John Foreman, a former British defense attaché to Moscow and Kyiv, observed, "Zelenskyy must be pulling his hair out. Today's meeting with Trump is now completely overshadowed and overtaken by the Budapest meeting." Adding insult to injury, Trump has hinted at indirect talks between Putin and Zelenskyy, contradicting Zelenskyy's long-held desire for a face-to-face meeting. "They don't get along too well, those two," Trump said. "So we may do something where we're separate but equal." This suggests a potential mediation role for the U.S., but it also undermines Zelenskyy's agency in the peace process. Ushakov reiterated that Putin had warned Trump that supplying Kyiv with Tomahawks won't change the situation on the battlefield, but would cause substantial damage to the relationship between our countries. This statement highlights the potential consequences of U.S. support for Ukraine and the pressure Moscow is exerting on Washington. Zelenskyy, who met with U.S. defense contractors prior to his White House visit, has remained silent on the Putin-Trump call. However, some Ukrainian officials are trying to spin the situation positively, suggesting that Putin's outreach demonstrates his fear of new Ukrainian weapon supplies. Today's call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Putin demonstrates how even the discussion about Tomahawk missiles had already forced Putin back into dialogue with America. Wrote Andriy Sybiha, Ukraine's foreign minister, on X. The conclusion is that we need to continue with strong steps. Strength can truly create momentum for peace. Despite Moscow's claims of readiness to end the war, Putin has shown no indication of compromise or scaling back his goals. J.D. Vance, the U.S. vice president, offered a more cautious perspective, stating that the Russians and the Ukrainians are just not at the point where they can make a deal, and that a settlement remains possible but will require a lot more work. He pointed to a misalignment of expectations, suggesting the Russians tend to think they're doing better on the battlefield than they actually are. What do you think? Is Trump right to prioritize U.S. missile reserves, even if it means potentially weakening Ukraine's defense? Does Putin have a legitimate right to voice his concerns about U.S. military aid to Ukraine? And ultimately, what role should the U.S. play in brokering peace between Russia and Ukraine? Share your thoughts in the comments below.